It's a mineral, I think, said Alice.
Of course it is,
said the Duchess, who seemed ready to agree to anything that Alice said.
There's a large mustard mine near here, and the moral of that is, the more there is of mine, the less there is of yours.
Oh, I know, exclaimed Alice, who had not attended to this last remark. It's a vegetable. It doesn't look like one, but it is.
I quite agree with you, said the Duchess, and the moral of that is, be what you would seem to be. Or, if you like it put more simply, never imagine yourself not to be otherwise than what it might appear to others that what you were or might have been was not otherwise than what you have been would have appeared to them to be otherwise.
I think I should understand that better, Alice said very politely, if I had it written down, but I can't quite follow it as you say it.
Oh, there's nothing to what I say if I could choose, the Duchess replied in a pleasant tone.
Pray don't trouble yourself to say it any longer than that, said Alice.
Oh, don't talk about trouble, said the Duchess. I'll make you a present of everything I've said as yet.
A cheap sort of present, thought Alice. I'm glad people don't give birthday presents like that. But she did not venture to say it out loud.
Thinking again?
The Duchess asked, with another dig of her sharp little chin. I've a right to think, said Alice sharply, for she was beginning to feel a little worried.
Just about as much right, said the Duchess, as pigs have to fly, and the moral...
But here, to Alice's great surprise, the Duchess's voice died away, even in the middle of her favourite word moral, and the arm that was linked into hers began to tremble. Alice looked up, and there stood the Queen in front of them, with her arms folded, frowning like a thunderstorm.
Oh, it's a fine day, your Majesty,
the Duchess began in a low, weak voice.
Now, I give you fair warning,
shouted the Queen, stamping on the ground as she spoke.
Either you or your head must be off, and that in about half no time. Take your choice.
The Duchess took her choice and was gone in a moment.
Let's get on with the game,
the Queen said to Alice, and Alice was too frightened to say a word, but slowly followed her back to the croquet ground. The other guests had taken advantage of the Queen's absence and were resting in the shade. However, the moment they saw her, they hurried back to the game, the Queen merely remarking that a moment's delay would cost them their lives. All the time they were playing, the Queen never left off quarrelling with the other players and shouting,
"Off with his head!"
or
"Off with her head!"
Those whom she sentenced were taken into custody by the soldiers, who of course had to leave off being archers to do this. So that by the end of half an hour or so, there were no archers left, and all the players except the King, the Queen, and Alice were in custody and under sentence of execution. Then the Queen left off, quite out of breath, and said to Alice,
"Have you seen the mock turtle yet?"
No, said Alice. I don't even know what a mock turtle is.
It's the thing mock turtle soup is made from, said the Queen.
I never saw one, or heard of one, said Alice.
Come on then, said the Queen, and he will tell you his history.
And as they walked off together, Alice heard the King say in a low voice to the company generally,
You're all pardoned.
Come, that's a good thing, she said to herself, for she had felt quite unhappy at the number of executions the Queen had ordered. They very soon came upon a griffin, lying fast asleep in the sun.
Up, you lazy thing, said the Queen, and take this young lady to the Mock Turtle, and to hear his history. I must go back and see after some executions I have ordered.
And she walked off, leaving Alice alone with the griffin. Alice did not quite like the look of the creature, but on the whole, she thought it would be quite as safe to stay with it as to go after the savage Queen. So she waited. The griffin sat up and rubbed his eyes. Then it watched the Queen till she was out of sight, and then it chuckled.
What fun!
Said the griffin, half to himself and half to Alice. What is the fun? Said Alice.
Huh? Why, she, said the griffin. It's all her fancy, that. They never execute nobody, you know. Now, come on.
Everyone says, come on here, thought Alice as she went slowly after it. I was never so ordered about before in all my life. Never. They had not gone far before they saw the Mock Turtle in the distance, sitting sad and lonely on the little edge of a rock. And as they came nearer, Alice could hear him sighing as if his heart would break. She pitied him deeply. What is his sorrow? She asked the griffin, and the griffin answered very nearly the same words as before.
It's all his fancy, that. He hasn't got no sorrow, you know. Now, come on.
So they went up to the Mock Turtle, who looked at them with large eyes full of tears, but said nothing.
This here young lady,
said the griffin,
she wants for to know your history. She do.
I'll tell it to her,
said the Mock Turtle in a deep, hollow tone.
Sit down before you, and don't speak a word till I've finished.
So they sat down, and nobody spoke for some minutes. Alice thought to herself, I don't see how he can ever finish if he doesn't begin. But she waited patiently.
Once,
said the Mock Turtle at last with a deep sigh,
I was a real turtle.
These words were followed by a very long silence, broken only by the occasional exclamation of a from the griffin, and the constant heavy sobbing of the Mock Turtle. Alice was very nearly getting up and saying, Thank you, sir, for an interesting story. But she could not help thinking there must be more to come. So she sat down, sat still, and said nothing.
When we were little,
the Mock Turtle went on at last, more calmly, though still sobbing a little now and then.
We went to school in the sea. The master was an old turtle. We used to call him Tortoise.
Why did you call him Tortoise, if he wasn't one? Alice asked.
called him tortoise because he taught us, said the mock turtle angrily. Really, you are very dull.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself for asking such a simple question,
added the Gryphon. And then they both sat silent and looked at poor Alice, who felt ready to sink into the earth. At last the Gryphon said to the Mock Turtle,
"Drive on, old fellow. Don't be all day about it."
And he went on in these words.
Yes, we went to school in the sea, though you mightn't believe it.
I never said I didn't, interrupted Alice.
You did, said the Mock Turtle.
Hold your tongue,
added the Gryphon before Alice could speak again. The Mock Turtle went on.
We had the best education. In fact, we went to school every day.
I've been to a day school too, said Alice. You needn't be so proud as all that.
What extras?
asked the Mock Turtle a little anxiously. Yes, said Alice. We learnt French and music.
And washing,
said the Mock Turtle. Certainly not, said Alice indignantly.
Oh, then yours wasn't a really good school, said the Mock Turtle in a tone of great relief. Now, at ours, they had, at the end of the bill, French, music, and washing. Extra.
You couldn't have wanted it much, said Alice, living at the bottom of the sea.
I couldn't afford to learn it. Oh, said the Mock Turtle with a sigh. I only took the regular course.
And what was that? Inquired Alice.
Reeling and writhing, of course, to begin with, the Mock Turtle replied, and then the different branches of arithmetic, ambition, distraction, uglification, and derision.
I never heard of uglification, Alice ventured to say. What is it? The Gryphon lifted up both its paws in surprise.
Never heard of uglifying?
He exclaimed.
You know what beautify is, I suppose.
Yes, said Alice doubtfully. It means to make everything prettier.
Well then,
the Gryphon went on,
if you don't know what to uglify is, you are simpleton.
Alice did not feel encouraged to ask any more questions about it, so she turned to the Mock Turtle and said, "What else had you to learn?"
Well, there was mystery, the Mock Turtle replied, counting off the subjects of his flappers. Mystery, ancient and modern, and seography, then drawing. The drawing master was an old conker eel. They used to come once a week. He taught us drawing, stretching, and fainting in coils.
And what was that like? Asked Alice.
Well, I can't show it you myself, the Mock Turtle said. I'm too stiff, and the Gryphon, he never learnt it.
Hadn't time, said the Gryphon. I went to classical master, though. He was an old crab, he was.
I never went to him, the Mock Turtle said with a sigh. Oh, he taught laughing and grief, they used to say.
So he did, so he did,
said the Griffin, sighing in his turn, and both creatures hid their faces in their paws. How many hours a day did you do lessons? Said Alice, in a hurry to change the subject.
Oh, 10 hours the first day,
said the Mock Turtle.
9 the next, and so on.
What a curious plan, exclaimed Alice.
No, that's the reason they're called lessons,
said the Griffin remarked.
Because they listen from day to day.
This was quite a new idea to Alice, and she thought it over a little before she made her next remark. Then the 11th day must have been a holiday.
Oh, of course it was,
said the Mock Turtle. And how did you manage on the 12th? Alice went on eagerly.
Ah, that's enough about lessons. The
Griffin interrupted in a very decided tone.
Tell her something about the games now.
Chapter 10. The Lobster Quadrille. The Mock Turtle sighed deeply and drew the back of one flapper across his eyes. He looked at Alice and tried to speak, but for a minute or two, sobs choked his voice.
Same as if he had a bone in his throat,
said the Griffin, and it set to work, shaking him and punching him in the back. At last the Mock Turtle recovered his voice, and with tears running down his cheeks, and he went on again.
You may not have lived under the sea.
I haven't, said Alice.
And perhaps you will never even introduced to a lobster.
Alice began to say, I once tasted, but checked herself hastily and said, No, never.
So you can have no idea what a delightful thing a lobster quadrille is.
No, indeed, said Alice. What sort of dance is it?
Why,
said the Griffin,
you first form into line along the sea shore.
2 lines,
cried the Mock Turtle.
Seals, turtles, salmon, and so on. Then, when you've cleared all the jellyfish out of the way.
That generally takes some time,
interrupted the Griffin.
You advance twice.
Each with a lobster as a partner,
cried the Griffin.
Of course,
the Mock Turtle said.
Advance twice. Set 2 partners.
Change lobsters and retire in same order,
continued the Griffin.
Then, you know,
the Mock Turtle went on,
you throw
the lobsters!
shouted the Griffin, with a bound into the air.
As far as to sea as you can. Swim after them!
Screamed the Griffin.
Turn a somersault in the sea,
cried the Mock Turtle, capering wildly about.
Change lobsters again,
yelled the Griffin at the top of his voice.
And back to land again. And that's all the first figure,
said the Mock Turtle, suddenly dropping his voice, and the 2 creatures, who had been jumping about like mad things all the time, sat down again, very sadly and quietly, and looked at Alice. It must be a very pretty dance, said Alice timidly.
Would you like to see a little of it?
said the Mock Turtle.
Oh, very much indeed, said Alice.
Come, let's try the first figure,
said the Mock Turtle to the Griffin.
We can do it without lobsters, you know. We shall sing.
Oh, you sing,
said the Griffin.
I've forgotten the words.
So they began solemnly dancing around and around Alice, every now and then treading on her toes when they passed too close, and waving their front paws to mark the time, while the Mock Turtle sang this very slowly and sadly.
Will you walk a little faster? Said a whiting to a snail. There's a porpoise close behind us, and he's treading on my tail. See how eagerly the lobsters and the turtles all advance. They are waiting on the shingle. Will you come and join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you join the dance? You can really have no notion how delightful it will be when they take us up and throw us with the lobsters out to sea. But the snail replied, too far, and gave a look askance. Said he thanked the whiting kindly, but he would not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not join the dance. Would not, could not, would not, could not join the dance. What matters it how far we go? His scaly friend replied. There is another shore, you know, upon the other side. The further off from England, the nearer it is to France. Then turn not pale, beloved snail, but come and join the dance. Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you, won't you, won't you join the dance?
Oh, thank you. It was a very interesting dance to watch, said Alice, feeling very glad that it was all over at last. And I do so like that curious song about the whiting.
Well, as to the whiting,
said the Mock Turtle,
you've seen them, of course.
Oh, yes, said Alice. I've often seen them at dinner. She checked herself hastily.
Oh, I don't know where Din may be,
said the Mock Turtle.
But if you have seen them so often, of course you know what they look like.
I believe so, Alice replied thoughtfully. They have their tails in their mouths, and they're all over crumbs.
Oh, you're wrong about the crumbs,
said the Mock Turtle.
Crumbs would all wash off in the sea, but they have their tails in their mouths. And the reason is...
Here the Mock Turtle yawned and shut his eyes.
"Tell her about the reason and all that," he said to the Griffin.
"The reason is," said the Griffin, "that they would go with the lobsters to the dance. So they get thrown out to sea. So they had to fall a long way. So they got their tails fast in their mouths so they wouldn't get them out again. That's all."
Thank you, said Alice. It's very interesting. I never knew much about waiting before.